If you woke up as your 10-year-old self with all your current memories, what's the first thing you'd do? Story 1. Find a notebook and a pen and start writing down everything I can remember. I don't want to have forgotten about all the shit I want to act on because I have to wait most of a decade before I can do anything with it. Story 2. Mow way more lawns and do way better in school. Invest that money into Apple right before they were going to go bankrupt. Story 3. Call my dad and beg him not to take his own life. Explain the things he'd miss, like meeting his future grandkids. 10 was a really hard age for me. Story 4. Am I going back in time to when I was 10? Or am I waking up tomorrow in a 10-year-old body? I got work tomorrow. Mortgage ain't paying for itself. Story 5. Spoil the sixth sense for the kid in school who spoiled it for me. It won't come out for another 5 years, but hell, remember. Story 6. Cry hysterically. My childhood was horrible in so many ways. I don't want to relive a single day of it. Story 7. Quit junk food and start some sport. Also get a hobby and set clear goals. Had I done this back then, I'd be much further in life than I am now. Story 8. Swear. That's like losing a 30-year-old save file. FK me, that's a lot of work to redo. I've still got the hell that is middle school to look forward to. Then I'd have to go get ready for school. To boot, because it's FKNG September, and school started like 3 weeks ago. Edit. Middle school. Some of y'all did not go to middle school in the 90s. They didn't just exclude you from their little cliques or refuse to let you sit at the cool table at lunch. This shoot was physical. It was violent, degrading, and pervasive. And the admin did F all about it. FOH with your middle school wouldn't be that bad. Horseshit. Yeah, but you could just do things differently because you have a leg up with decades of extra knowledge. You're still in an immature 7th, 8th grade body, and now your speech patterns and thought processes make you stick out like a sore thumb. Good luck avoiding their attention in that state. Answer. Then I'd have to go get ready for school. I ride a bus, I think, right? What time does it pick me up? Where does it pick me up? Which classes do I have? Which room do I need to be in right now? Who are my teachers? Where's my locker? How do I open it to get my books? Fuck. Who are all of these kids I don't remember? Why does no one understand half of what I'm saying? Oh, right. None of these words exist yet. What's the combination to my bike lock? Actually, I remember that one. The first few weeks are going to be a nightmare of settling in and finding a rhythm. I don't remember any phone numbers, addresses, etc. People are going to think I had a stroke or something. Maybe I can lean into that and get some basics of my life re-explained to me. Story 9. Tell my dad to buy IBM and hold for 6 years. Tell him to invest in Microsoft and Apple and hold. Then tell him to see a cardiologist immediately. Story 10. Tell my dad that the doctor isn't going to hurt him and it will save his life. Colon cancer is no joke. Story 11. Go with the flow for a bit while I got my head in order. Go to school, etc., while I worked out how I was going to play this. 10. 1979 is a weird one for me, though. We grew up poor, but my grandmother had a brain tumor that year, so we put ourselves in debt to go to New Zealand to be with her. And my uncle committed tragic end. So turbulent time, but I'd still want to go with the flow and figure it out as it happened for a few months. Story 12. Pet my cat and thank her for guiding me. I'm a veterinarian now. Then I'd clean the house for my mom. Story 13. Get myself into therapy once I have money to fix all my childhood issues caused by my father's abuse and alcoholism. Not gotten married so young and not having kids so young. Invest and save money. I would not have joined Mormonism. Travel and meet women around the world. Story 14. Cuddle my first ever cat again and tell her that when I promised that I'd always love her, I meant it. Story 15. It's 1993. And I'm now an even weirder 10-year-old than I was. No adult is going to take my warnings about 911, Bush, Trump, etc. seriously, so that's not helpful. Also, my dad is definitely not going to believe me when I say, Dad, buy a bunch of Apple stocks so we can be rich later. Trust me, I'm a time traveler now. So I'll have 8 years to develop a plan to save the world, which means inventing Facebook in 2003 and Twitter in 2005, and retaining sole control of both platforms. I'd still be too young to buy a controlling share of PayPal, but I could probably get in on the ground floor of Tesla and box Musk out. By 2015, I should be rich and powerful enough to propel Bernie Sanders into the White House and turn the Democratic Party into one that's actually capable of reversing climate change, fighting fascism, rectifying income inequality, and improving the lives of workers. Story 16. Tell my mom to stop being friends with one of her friends because she is about to start an affair with my dad that will tear our family apart, and also to still divorce him because he sucks. But that betrayal was a doozy. Story 17. Get diagnosed with ADHD. Just because I could sit still and read constantly and had good grades doesn't mean I didn't have it. Story 18. Cry as I have to deal with all that all over again, and no way out of it. Might end up shutting down earlier than the last time. Wouldn't be a healthy situation. Story 19. Tell myself I'm good enough, and to always be myself in the mirror, something I never did. Then give myself a much-needed hug. Story 20. Hey mom, I think I have ADHD. Can I go to a therapist or get prescribed medication? And boom, just like that, full ride scholarship to any college I want. Answer. My mom even suspected my ADHD herself and tried to get me diagnosed. She's a teacher. She recognized the signs. Too bad some incompetent doctor probably saw it as a personal attack on his ego that my mom dared to try and assume she could spot something obvious. He had to spend some time learning how to spot correctly. So he didn't even test me. He talked to me for 10 minutes about how I was feeling and then went, "They can hold a conversation so they're fine." I've been fuming over this jerk since my mom told me what happened. I know I just have to ask her to try again. My whole life would be so much easier now. I may have even avoided the depression and burnout. Story 21. Start getting fit. 10-year-old me didn't understand what it meant to be 16, 18 years old guy with a fit body. Story 22. I have a learning disability, and at 10 years old I was hardly functional. This wouldn't help me. I'm doing fine now, though. Thanks for asking. Story 23. Probably have a breakdown. It would be nearly impossible for me to recreate the situations, both opportunities and hardships, that gave me 3 kids, 2 stepkids, a wonderful wife, etc. I'd have to come to terms with all that loss before I could even think of capitalizing on my knowledge. And it being the late 70s, early 80s, makes proper, empathetic mental health care more stigmatized and harder to find. Luckily, my parents were cool, so I wouldn't end up committed or drugged to the gills. Story 24. Cry. I have 3 kids and a wonderful wife. I may be able to meet my wife again, but I'll never see my kids again. It would be terrible. Story 25. Be a much bigger pain in the jerk to my divorced parents. I was a much better kid than they deserved, and my 10-year younger half-sister got away with takedown. Story 26. I dreamt this once. It was awful. I cried and felt so lonely to be my 27-yo self in my 10-yo self body. Story 27. Go running for a while. Eat a bunch of ice cream. Go running some more. Play some Nintendo. Hug my mom and dad. Story 28. I'd be better to the people I was around. I mean, I wasn't a jerk, but I was a child. Just be a better person. Be less immature with the girls I dated. Spend more time with my mom. Work on hitting a curve better. Learn a musical instrument. Story 29. Going right to the Intel Pentium, powered family PC, and type boobs into Alta Vista to get a pixelated rendering, line by line over the next 5 minutes. Story 30. Work on my acting skills. Go for auditions of Home Alone 2. Get the lead role. Kick DJ T in his nuts. Story 31. I'm going to spend the next 18 years being the best older brother I can be. I miss him every single day. I always wish I had been better than I was. Story 32. Cry from happiness. Then start writing down the names of every major corporation I can think of and invest in all of them as soon as possible. Also, I would approach dating very differently. Story 33. When you're 12, not this summer, but next, go with Samantha in the canoe across the lake to her cabin. Story 34. Don't use my phone that much and read more books and just ask more questions about the world. Go on more trips. Spend more quality time with my parents and my dogs and tell my dogs I love them every day. Spend more time outside. Story 35. Cry with happiness because I've basically had a great life and now I'll be able to add everything I missed the first time around. Story 36. Run away. I'd leave Oregon. I would become a little criminal. I'd run away to Canada and stay a virgin forever. Story 37. Don't ever smoke or drink. Plant substances fine. Make better decisions. And don't let Alan go to the river. Story 38. Mark the date in my calendar for when my dog is born. I'd want him to have him in every version of every lifetime. He's the best dog in the whole world. Story 39. It would be 2007, so I'd start mowing the lawn for money, save up till I'm 12. Bitcoin comes out, spend a couple hundred, maybe a couple thousand on Bitcoin. Wait, and then I'll be a billionaire. Story 40. I had a shoot teenage and a boring start to my adult life. But these decisions and hardship led me to have a life that I never thought would actually happen. I'd be extremely sad to lose it all and remember it. I don't know what I'd do. Story 41. Do way better in school. Learn programming early. Chase way more girls as a teenager. Priorities to be adjusted as needed. Edit. This would be 1980. It's hard to remember that far back. Story 42. Spend more time with my mom. Not move out so young. Cherish every second she was alive. Tell her that I would help her look for my big sister, adopted at birth, so she got to meet her before she died. Tell her that she's amazing and perfect, and most importantly, hug her more. Story 43. Cry, because due to the butterfly effect, none of my children would be born, since it would be impossible to retrace my steps for 15 years. Story 44. Tell my parents I was wrong. Bitcoin is not a scam. Buy literally all of it. Literally take a second mortgage on the house. All your life savings. And fudge, hold it for as long as possible. You can sell some in 2022 to quit your jobs, but keep holding it. My parents literally trusted me so much because I was a relatively intelligent kid who made a lot of good guesses about the world here and there and just generally wanted to know a lot. So when they talked about building a BTC mining rig and buying up a lot of it, I turned around and said, yeah, that sounds like the biggest scam I've ever heard of. That makes literally no sense. Well, I still think Bitcoin makes 0 sense, but it's worth 100K now, so... Story 45. Start mowing lawns. Earn money until I turn 18. Then invest heavily into Microsoft and Google. Once I have established a comfortable nest egg, move somewhere that is going to eventually legalize plant substance. Oh, and stay single, not cutting any slices out of my pie. Story 46. 2 things. First, convince my dad to quit drinking. Second, warn my mom about her back. Everything else, the same, so that I can end up in the same place I am now. No regrets, know what I'm saying. Story 47. I had a nightmare almost exactly like this once. I spent the entire dream crying over exactly how fudge I was and how I'd probably never get my current life back. You couldn't pay me any amount of money to go back to my childhood. Story 48. Report my father to the police so I don't have to endure him terrorizing our family for another 5 years. Story 49. I feel like I'm either immediately telling someone that I think I'm going crazy, or I would never say anything to anyone about it. Story 50. If everything stayed the same for everyone else in the world, there would be a lot I'd do differently, but I'd still want to make sure to meet my wife at the same time I did previously, a few years ago. Story 51. Bet on sports and make investments. Make sure I still cross paths with my wife. Warn my uncle about the aneurysm in his brain so maybe he can get it fixed before it eliminate him 7 years later. Do something, anything to keep 911 from happening. Story 52. PLZ, don't start smoking. And don't take any adult beverage at all. Not because I'm sick today because of smoking or drinking 4 beers a week. Just don't start. Story 53. Take as many photos as possible and interview as many people as possible. The world around us is always changing, and people always leave our lives. It would be 1985. Story 54. OP didn't specify we actually go back to that time, just that we wake up as our 10-year-old self. So probably be fired from my job since, well, I'd be 10, and they frown upon that, LOL. Story 55. Such a tricky question as a parent now. Figuring out a way to get to the exact same point to get the exact same kiddos. That would be some real magic to pull off. Story 56. Cry knowing if I have a kid, it won't be the same one. I'd be the only 10-year-old living with the loss of a child. Story 57. Hug my father. Tell him how much I love him. He died when I was 17. I'm 62 and still miss him so much. Story 58. Okay, so there's this thing called Bitcoin, and it's going to seem stupid, but wait to sell at 12K, 50K, and 75K. Story 59. Try to save all my loved ones who died before I even turned 30. Mom's probably a lost cause since she dies when I'm 11, but I can save my sister and my lil' cuz. Story 60. This is sort of the plot of my favorite book, Replay by Ken Grimwood. The main character dies in the first few pages and comes back in his youth with all his memories intact, with surprising results. Story 61. Earn money and buy Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, and Twitter stock at the IPO. Prevent 9/11. Somehow sabotage Trump so he never becomes president. Stuff like that. Story 62. Tell my dad to never take the job in the photo lab. He got multiple myeloma from prolonged exposure to the heavy metal photo processing chemicals. Story 63. Tell myself, don't give a shoot about people's opinions. University is a waste of time. For me, travel more before settling down. Story 64. I'd do a full 180 reset on my life. Be more bold but understanding. Seriously, y'all do not want to know how my life's been after the age of 10, which is like only 6 years removed. Story 65. I would make sure I was an excellent student, and as I got a little older, I would use birth control faithfully. Story 66. Get an emancipation lawyer to keep my parents from forcing religion and substandard private school on me. Story 67. Go take a walk with my dog, chill with my grandma, learn a little more about my uncle. In one of life's greatest ironies, I became more like him than he could have imagined. Story 68. Hug my cats, although at 10 we only had one. The next one came into my life when I was 13-ish. Go to the best high school I can walk to and demand I get entry. Then everything from there should fall into place, I imagine. Story 69. Take school a little more seriously. Spend my dead time babysitting more when I'm old enough and other things that would give me more freedom. I babysitted from age 13, but I could have done much more. I also delivered newspapers. Story 70. Cry, because I'm still stuck with the parents I had, but now I know what I am going to have to exist through. Story 71. Packing away some money for the stock market, Apple, Nvidia, AMD, and whatnot. If underage have parents buy the stocks with me as a beneficiary. Story 72. Am I waking up tomorrow or in the year I was 10 years old? Tomorrow, panic. Years ago, panic and strategize. Story 73. If this involves time travel, then save money for a rainy day. Cash it in on buying some stocks on Google, Amazon, Walmart, etc. Also, plant the seed in my ex before we met so we can start before we even got together. On the other hand, if it means being 10 now, then make sure I buy one of them bulletproof backpacks and carry a ceramic knife to school. Hidden in the backpack, because I am not going to be a victim of a school shooting. Story 74. After I freaked out, make a 10 to 15-year plan to follow. Guide my mom to keep up with new technology and try to convince her to buy me stocks with my saved birthday money. Encourage her to budget to buy property. Today's knowledge 48 years ago could help set us and our future generations up financially and emotionally and possibly prevent a few family deaths, including hers. Be prepared for my dad's dementia. Realize that life isn't just about me. Story 75. I would use the $500 I had in my bank account to purchase Microsoft shares at 77 cents a share, then save that money till I graduated high school, at which point I'd pull out the $55,000 and invest it in Amazon's initial IPO, selling those stocks in 2009 and investing in Bitcoin. Total value increase from a start of 500 to 5.87 trillion. Then I'd put all of it in a pretty much standard savings and live off $3 million per year. The other $203.6 billion in interest would go to making an unprecedented impact on 3 fronts. Ending homelessness, $30 billion. Ending hunger, $50 billion. Healthcare affordability. Medical debt forgiveness, $123 billion. Story 76. A cartwheel and I'd play tennis, and then I'd practice the violin. I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis at 14. I have had multiple surgeries and tennis and cartwheel not happening in this life, and violin has limits. Also, I'd hug my grandparents and great aunts and uncles. Story 77. That would be 1977 for me. Obviously, do some investing, probably Apple, Microsoft, etc. But mostly I think I do a lot better in school. I was a shoot student and was even kicked out of high school. I really regret that now. I'd also realize that your younger years are when you have the most free time. So I'd probably convince my mom to put me into piano lessons. I love music so much. It just eliminates me that I can't plan anything. I've tried to learn now, but it's much harder as an old dude. I'd also punch Mike Newberry in his ugly jerk face. Story 78. Try to make the same decisions I made the first time, so I can meet my daughter again in about 20 years. Story 79. Pick up Pokemon sooner instead of wasting my time on Mario Kart. I really wish I experienced Pokewalker more. I started Soul Silver like 2 years after it came out. Story 80. If forgive my parents and understand they are doing the best with what they have. It'd save myself 35 years of healing wondering why I am the way I am. Story 81. Have the best relationship possible with my mother as possible. Just knowing how much I miss her now at 33 losing her at 16. Goddamn, time flies. Story 82. I'd find a way to befriend my husband and hope that we can avoid some of the terrible shit we've both been through by just being there for each other. He was only 5 minutes away from me for most of my life. He was kind of a turd in high school, but so was I. We could be turds together and avoid our soul-wrecking failed relationships. I'd probably confide in my mom, because she would believe me. I might have to wait until she's through her obsessive Christian phase, but a 10-year can't do shoot without an adult, so I'd need her on my side. I'd actually do the work in school so I could graduate normally and pursue a real degree. Without the developing brain experimental phase, I could avoid cigarettes and adult beverage. I could be nicer to my stepdad during my teenage rebellious phase. Maybe even convince them to stay together. Who knows? Not because I necessarily thought they were great together, but they were 10 times better together than any of the shoot that followed. And I would insist my parents buy all the good stocks. They'd be set for life, and subsequently so would I and my husband. Story 83. I would tell myself to take college physics. I didn't need it for my degree and professional career, but if I had taken it, I could have gone on to medical school. I'm fine with how my life turned out, but I think I could have helped out a lot more people if I would have just taken that darn physics class. Story 84. Pick up some markers and start to draw. I'm trying to teach myself now, and I so wish I would have done more art growing up. It takes so much practice and time. In high school, I had the choice to go theater or art, and I chose theater and abandoned art. Big regrets. Story 85. Hug my mom. Tell her how much I love her. I used to be such a brat to her, and she's the nicest person in the world. Story 86. I've always wanted a movie or short story about this where someone goes back and is dead set on investing or studying or not fudge something up. But after like 2 months of the same social pressures of puberty and school, they end up falling right back into the same habits to cope and basically repeat the same life. It's honestly what would probably happen anyway. Story 87. Become a little entrepreneur and leave the house legally, change my name ASAP. Buy Bitcoin. Find a quiet place to retire at 40. Story 88. I probably would have never met my partner, had my kids, be where I'm at today. Story 89. Stop eating, associate eating with safe space, and actually participate in PE classes, and convince my parents to buy NVIDIA. Story 90. I'd go beg my parents to understand that I was never just being lazy, or dramatic, or overly sensitive, or reckless for the sake of being reckless. That if they would just take the time to notice that my brain was actually wired differently, and get me tested and properly medicated at age 10, it would save me another 18 years of feeling like I was just defective. Then maybe I'd have done better in school, or been able to hold down a job for more than a few months at a time, or finished college, and maybe even found a career before the age of 28. I might have made my major life decisions based on logic and reason, instead of impulse and mania. I might not have spent so many years wishing I didn't exist, and maybe I wouldn't have attempted to make that a reality as many times as I did. Story 91. I would reevaluate my life. I have everything, but don't seem to be able to be present to enjoy it. Parents are alive, own a house, financially independent, married to my university crush, have a healthy son. I think that I used to be smarter at 10. Story 92. Convince my parents that I am clairvoyant by predicting a few things. Get them to play the right stocks and become rich as shoot by 12. Story 93. Honestly, probably mourn and cry. I am a father to 2 twin boys, and going back in time means they may never ever be born. That's an existence I don't want to be a part of. Story 94. Not lose my virginity to that fudge-tard boyfriend who got me preggers, then claimed it wasn't his, and spread it all over school that I was pregnant, forcing me to leave all my friends and move to NY City to live with my grandparents to avoid the scandal. But on second thought, I met my husband, and he raised my son as his, and gave me the most amazing life. So there might be a reason for it all after all, beyond having such a wonderful son out of it all. Story 95. For me, that would be 1967. Hug my dad, hug my grandparents, then start saving every single penny to buy real estate in the Bay Area and Apple and Microsoft at their IPOs. Story 96. Ignore all the things my mom said about me and my character. Let myself know that getting help from a professional is my best option without family's help. Story 97. I don't know. Write things down to not do, what I should do instead. But like I really don't want to go through this all again. Story 98. Plan for the next 8 years to go to the same college as my partner, so we don't have to wait until our mid-30s to meet. Also remember to get my dog when he's born in 2012. Story 99. I'm so failing at her math. Teacher, is pi 227? Me, no. Teacher, that's wrong. 227 is 3.14, which is the same as pi. Me, but pi is an irrational number. Teacher, numbers can't be irrational. Only people. College and beyond were a complete breeze, but fudge grade school. Fudge it's so hard. Going back would be hell. Story 100. I would certainly care less about what people think about me. I would remember that they don't study for me. They don't do my chores. I would study hard. I made good grades, but I would study hard and apply myself more efficiently. I would be kinder to my parents and siblings. I wasn't a jerk, but you have always been nicer to your parents and your siblings. I would be much more selective about who I spent time with. I would save money. I would invest, starting in my 20s. I would never allow somebody I was dating to influence me about my friends, my money, etc. I would love my quirks. Story 101. I don't go back. My life as lived led me to the family I have now. My kids wouldn't be the same even if by some miracle I managed to nudge enough of my do-over towards the same direction and get together with my wife again. I would miss them terribly. But to think that my life would end up even remotely the same is nuts. Just going back to 10 years old with the knowledge I have today would make me look like a genius. Even if I was dumbing myself down to go through school the same way, that knowledge would still bleed through. My parents moved us to a new town when I was 11. Knowing how things turned out would bleed through when they first tell me, "We're moving." I'd know they were lying to me about the reasons too. Yet moving is a requirement to meeting my wife later on, despite all the troubles it brought. But it's all for naught anyway, because my kids as they are today will not be the same kids I end up during a do-over, even if I met my wife again. It's effectively random chance that they are who they are, so hard no at a do-over. Story 102. Sleep at my grandparents' house. Get some breakfast done by my grandpa, and hug them as much as possible. Since it's the early times of internet, I might try to save some internet domains. Story 103. Important distinction. Am I my 10-year-old self now in 2025, or am I my 10-year-old self back when I was 10? Story 104. Make friends with the girl across the street and the family on the corner block. Do better academically. Invest my grandma's inheritance money in Netflix rentals and Amazon booksellers. I want to be sure I can survive on my own. Then buy some hidden cameras and record everything that goes on in my house. The mind games and mental abuse my dad hid from the outside world. All the times he made mom think she was going crazy. Just before calling the police, I'd hug my mom and convince her that no matter what dad said, I always loved her the most, and that I'm sorry I was too scared to go against him. Story 105. Hello 1984 again. Let's make all new bad decisions. But since you said it'd have all my current memories, I'm about to freak my parents out by going out and driving around the neighborhood. LMAO. Story 106. Hide all my first edition Pokemon cards from my older brother so he doesn't steal them later to pawn them for substances. Story 107. This question wasn't very specific. Do I just wake up in my 10-year-old body currently, or do I wake up in my 10-year-old body in the past? If it's in the past, I definitely change one thing. I'm not going to say what it is, but I change it. But currently, I guess I just do a bunch of illegal shoot and act like a spoiled brat and get away with it. Story 108. Wonder what happened to my 10-year-old brain. If I'm now in this body, where did this body's mind go? Story 109. Make hard decisions about people I know and how we met. Any change in their life, and we may never be friends. Some needed to be saved from horrible situations. Wonder how to come to grips with the knowledge of things like 911, plane crashes, oil spills, etc. may just have to happen. As soon as possible, get employed and work like hell to invest in Apple at penny stocks, Coral, BlackBerry, Google, Bitcoin, etc. Transition early so I didn't waste my life feeling trapped. Call the cops on my friend's dad who was being intimacy abused at home. Oh, and been beat the shoot out of my bullies when I was still a minor. Like really beat them, so they never came near me ever again. Story 110. Immediately wrap up all of my original Star Wars toys, the year would be 1981, and have my mom put them away. Story 111. Write it all down. Invest wisely. Not be friends with certain people. Be nice to my brother, get ADD meds earlier, travel more. Story 112. I would be really bummed that I have to live with my dad and stepmom again for another 8 years. Super happy that I can see my grandparents again, and overjoyed that my mother is alive. Story 113. I would be so excited and prepare for my high school years, not only knowing to stop worrying about how I looked because I was fudge hot AF but didn't know it then. LOL. And also appreciate my younger years more. And if I ever meet someone named Jesse, to run in the opposite direction. Story 114. I'd go to my elementary school and call out all the teachers who were really just glorified bullies. Story 115. Write everything down. Review health of those in household. Learn to stand up for myself. Avoid the relationships that hurt me. Start my family sooner. Marry before my grandfather passed. Story 116. I was bullied incessantly at 10 years old, which kind of shaped me into who I am. I cared too much about what everyone thought of me, and literally none of those people matter to me these days, nor are they doing nearly as well as me. I would be able to walk through the remainder of the relived time with so much confidence and knowledge. I know what I want to do as a career, that everything will turn out okay, and I will love my life and feel happy and confident someday. Also, I would start snowboarding immediately. I wish I'd learned when I was younger, and now I can. Story 117. Save up every penny and invest in the stock market, and then in Bitcoin. Knowing that my mother was mentally ill would save years of trauma work and therapies as an adult. Spend that time traveling instead. Story 118. I'll assume it happens at the time I was born on my birthday. Write down a bunch of things to remember. Pretend they are ideas for short stories. Start saving money. Story 119. I would honestly just take a week and enjoy life. Then I'd probably start writing journals, spending more times with my loved ones, focusing on school. Most of all, I'd start making some bank. Start calling everything in the future and get paid for it or something. Story 120. Get a paper route. Start mowing lawns. Save every penny to buy real estate and stocks later. Do way better at school. Go Ivy League. Story 121. Go find my partner and convince him to be my friend. Dislike that I had to wait until 40 to find my best friend. Story 122. Cry. Absolutely sob. I didn't do well during that time of life, and I can't imagine I'd have much emotional wherewithal with all that life experience shoved in such a young mind. After that, take better care of my and my brother's Pokemon cards. I've collected as a hobby for as long as I can remember. Take pretty decent care of my cards as is, but holy fudge if I'd had any idea how crazy this shoot was going to be. Would have been way more careful with some of those old ones. Story 123. Probably go clean my butt and shower as well as I do as an adult. Then eat a crap ton of ice cream. In all seriousness though, I'd spend the next 9 years trying to figure out if my life will go the same way and try to see if my future wife exists. Story 124. I go squeeze my mom and tell her how much I love her and miss her, and she'd be super confused. Then I'd do the same thing to my dad and have a God cry. Then I'd write down, buy Bitcoin. Then I'd go play GoldenEye at my boy's house and eat Hot Pockets. Story 125. Step 1. Get to the library. Step 2. Request they call CPS. Step 3. Raise hell when they resist. My real 10-year-old self got steamrolled. This would not be happening to my current me made miniature. Step 4. Begin grieving process. Story 126. Remind myself to buy Bitcoin when it first comes out. I had some spare money back then and thought about buying a couple hundred coins, but didn't think it would go anywhere. Story 127. You don't have to sleep with him. If you do, you don't have to have the baby. If you do, you don't have to marry him. Story 128. I think life would be incredibly awkward because you would feel like an adult pretending to be a child. No thanks. Story 129. Cry BC. I was finally an adult who was no longer subject to my parents' abuse, and I woke up finding life out of my control again. Also just had my first baby 12 days ago, and I would try to emulate my life perfectly, no matter how difficult. BC, I could not live with myself if my future changed and I didn't get her BC of it. Story 130. Hug my mom and beg her to get into therapy and prioritize herself. I lost her this year, and the whole process felt like losing her for the 10th time. But there was no comeback phase. It just is. Story 131. I would be relentless in pursuing my dreams. At my age of 43, it's not fair to my family for me to go off and be a musician. If I started again at 10 and stuck with it, it'd kick some serious butt and would have a solid career in music. Story 132. Lock in my baseball and buy Bitcoin just in case the MLB career doesn't take off. When I turn 18, it'll be 2010, so I'll still be able to get it while the getting is good. Tell nobody, and live my life as if money is no issue. Story 133. That depends. Am I 10 in the late 1980s or the mid-2020s? If it's the former, I would use my knowledge of the future to make a shitload of money. If it's that latter, I would probably cry. Not for myself so much as for my kids, since I would no longer be in a position to, maybe, make life in the 21st century tolerable for them. Story 134. Ask my parents to open an investment account for me and pick some stocks I know will end up huge when I am grown up. Story 135. Go and speak to the police and put an end to my torment and the future torment of my little brothers. Story 136. Get rid of all the wire coat hangers in the house. I lost my eye to a wire coat hanger on Nov 2 when I was 10. Now is the time to save me from being a cyclops. Story 137. Write down everything I remember about winning stocks, games, anything I could get my folks to get on early. Story 138. Take better care of my body, including my teeth. Get those braces, FFS. Actually learn a musical instrument. Commit to a hobby. Story 139. I would have never put a drink to my mouth. Adult beverage has had the most profound impact on my life in a negative way. Most of the terrible things in my life are attributable to the decisions I make intoxicated. The addiction has sunk its claws into me, and I am struggling to stop. It is to the point where I have considered ending things to get away from it. If I had the option, I would warn myself never to start, because the first drop that hit my lips has changed 2 decades of my life for the worse. Story 140. Breakdown crying. I wish so badly that I knew I was trans then, instead of not figuring it out for another nearly 2 decades. I wouldn't be able to handle it actually happening for a bit, then probably find my sibling and ask them if they remembered anything. Stuff would be different if I was the only one who remembered, compared to other people also knowing stuff. Then probably write some stuff down to help make sure I didn't forget it. Maybe do a little panic spiraling for a while. Hug my mom possibly. Story 141. Get pissed that I'm not already in love with my wife and having to wait to meet her, hopefully, again. Story 142. Turn in my abusers. One of my closest friends was getting beaten by his step-grandpa. I'm squealing on that piece of shoot as well. Story 143. Shoot myself in the head. No point in trying to change things or doing differently, getting rich and whatnots. Not when you're the problem. Story 144. After filling out the notebook, I would get a tape recorder and start asking my grandparents about their lives. Also, my great-aunt Irma. She traveled all over, and I think she had some great stories to tell. I would also try to be an ally to my sister, instead of letting my mother divide us. Story 145. Panic. Wonder what happened to my children. If I had all my memories, would I make the same mistakes? I was lucky to survive my marriage, but if I didn't, I wouldn't have my children. Story 146. Getting on ADHD meds that much earlier would have changed my academic life. Teachers tried to put me in accelerated classes multiple times, and I just couldn't physically force myself to do the work. Being able to study like a normal person would have set me on a far different course in life. Not that I'm a bad place now, though. Story 147. First then, I would do is tell my younger self to spend more time with the loved ones who would pass away. Story 148. In addition to quickly writing down things I'd like to avoid and the highlights of things to do again, I'd also write down school advice. Unfortunately, our school stopped teaching German and French just before I entered high school. And being on the border of Canada, at the time I was like, why should I bother learning Spanish? I'll never need it. French is what my school should have kept. Spanish would have been helpful so many times. Additionally, I try to convince myself to learn Japanese while still younger, and I have time. And I definitely skip going out for football. Don't have time for that tangent now. That said, regardless of what I try to change, having to relive everything with all my memories, I'm going to be the most cynical kid in school, knowing I'm surrounded by people where I can count on one hand the people that didn't bully me at some point by the end of high school the first time around. That said, my financial choices will probably be better the second time around. I won't waste money on things I won't get as much use out of as I expect, and I'll hopefully choose a college degree I'm interested in and not one other people try to steer me towards. Story 149. Call the FBI and tell them I have information regarding a few planes attempting to be hijacked for a terrorist plot. Story 150. I'm going to find my mom and yell, "F you, I am a boy and it's not a phase," but I can't actually swear at her because I wasn't allowed to, and she's still my mom. Story 151. Make sure to not let the dog eat my favorite bear, and realize it's stupid to listen to adults who believe you can be too old for something. Story 152. Probably have a mental breakdown, thinking I've just dreamt 12 years of my life. But after that, make sure I don't get baptized as a Jehovah's Witness. That'll make disassociating much smoother. Story 153. I'd tell my parents about my cousin who was molesting me and call an end to that. It would have changed the rest of my life. Story 154. Steal my neighbor's Corvette and go for an epic adventure. He crashed the car and died the summer between 11 and 12. They wouldn't understand that I saved his life in an enjoyable fashion, but I'd know. Story 155. It's the same answer I have every time I'm asked a question like this. Try to find a way to save my sister. Story 156. It's the year 1998, so hopefully I can find a way to prevent 911. Then wait till I graduate HS and invest my college money into Apple, 6 months before the iPhone gets announced. Story 157. Very first thing I would do is go pour a big bowl of overly sugary 90s cereal, watch some cartoons, then go play outside until the streetlights come on, and I would revel in that freedom. Then it'd do all the smart if I had all my knowledge in a 10-year-old body stuff starting the next day. For me, part of childhood that is amazing are the precious, carefree hours that you don't understand the value of until you're older. Story 158. Tell my dad to get radiation and chemotherapy instead of taking his chances with herbal remedies and prayer. Story 159. Hope like hell I have learned enough about mental health and addiction to save my mom and college sweetheart. So many things, but mostly that. Story 160. Go find my not dead mom and have us go visit my not dead grandparents. Start writing down everything bettable for the next 50 years. Story 161. I'd be afraid to do anything. If anything changes in my life, it means my kids aren't born. Sure, I'd have different kids, but it would mean losing the kids I have, and that would eliminate me. Story 162. Absolutely nothing. I don't want to mess the timeline that led me to find my husband and son. I don't think a lifetime of money is worth more than them. Story 163. Tell my parents I have social anxiety disorder and need to go to therapy. LMAO. Didn't get treatment for it until high school when it got so bad I also became clinically depressed. Story 164. Buy Bitcoin, Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, Tesla, would mow lawns, sell lemonade, work at McDonald's, 3 FKEN McDonald, 247 if I had to. Story 165. My father passed when I was 10. My luck, I would be reincarnated after. But to hug my dad, grandparents, and a few others would be nice. Start a journal and save money to invest. Disney stock doubled the day after Epcot opened. Get in line sooner for Star Wars tickets on opening weekend at a 72mm viewing. See SRV in concert. Story 166. That would put me in 1999. I'd travel to NY for the World Series and then push a certain real estate mogul in front of a bus. Story 167. Have a nervous breakdown about having to go through another 12 years of school all over again. I'd also tell my parents why I was never going to sleep over at a particular person's house again. Story 168. I would tell myself to keep away from certain people who changed the course of my life for the worse. I would, like others have said, write everything down and hopefully change the trajectory of my life and my family's life for the better. Story 169. Convince my parents that I'm smarter than the average 30-year-old. Make them be better with the money and mine. Use the next year to try to prevent 911. Story 170. After a short stint of going crazy over being 10 again, I try to figure out how I could start making investments. Not very original, but it will set me up for the rest of my life. Other than that, I'd probably have some depression over the realization that the change in my life's trajectory will likely mean I'll never meet my wife when I'm 24 and never have the children that we currently share together. Story 171. Beg my parents to get me out of the Christian school system. Spent way too much of my life working on undoing the damage that system did to my mind. Story 172. Not much at age 10, but I would gone out of town for university and finished. I would have started saving. I would not have married my ex. I would have realized some family members aren't worth the headache or tears. Story 173. Write down the following. Tech stocks until 99, property until 07, Bitcoin until 25, name redacted sucks. Don't date her. Name redacted also sucks. He is not a friend. Story 174. Cry, because now I don't have a childhood and I know too much. But after writing everything down, I'm making sports bets. And when the internet boom hits, I'm staying on top. Story 175. Start saving every penny and invest in Microsoft when I turn 21, as that is when they BTFU and created a new class of millionaire. Story 176. Tell my dad to quit smoking, then aggressively pursue computer programming and save all my money until Bitcoin is invented and buy everyone I could. Story 177. Write down everything I can remember, from stocks to investments to sporting events to everything I've gone through. If anything, I know I'll be rich AF in the future. When I'm done, I would bike to my grandparents' house. I'd sob uncontrollably and hug them with everything I had. Ask my grandma to make me food because her food was the best and she would always be so happy to make it for me. I'd look for my other set of grandparents and do the same. Sob, hug them uncontrollably, ask for food, and write down their stories and recipes. I'd tell my mom I don't want to go to Vancouver. I'd stay with her. I'd tell my dad to F off and that I know what he's up to and to get TF out of our family. I'd tell her we shouldn't move, but I'd also miss my kids and partner terribly being 10 and reliving all of that again. Ugh, I couldn't. Story 178. Start planning how to get the F out of my home life when I reach 18 so I could be free of the isolation inflicted by my narcissistic parent. Story 179. 1986. Try to survive till I graduate HS in 95 and make the same decisions. Then I invest in Nvidia, Apple, Google, and a couple others. Story 180. Write notes as others have said. Do better in school and work with my sisters so we can all have fantastic careers. One doc, one lawyer, one vet. Meet my current partner in HS so that I don't have to go through the DV marriage and divorce first. Call out my dad so he can do better and hopefully live longer. Spend more time with my grandparents. Save money better. Invest in Amazon, Microsoft, Bitcoin, etc., etc. Story 181. Hug my granddad. So tight. Tell him everything I know and show him any pictures I have. Ask any advice and have him tell me all the stories he told all the time. Record it. Everything. Remind him of how much I admire and love him. Truly my best friend. Next, don't talk to that guy. Don't go outside alone with him. Stay away from his friends too. Liking girls is okay and nothing is wrong with you. People who don't make time for you aren't worth it. Don't put them on a pedestal just because you're told to. Make them give you a reason. And so much more. But then, go back to my current life and husband. The first time I've ever been truly happy. Oh, and don't marry that girl. Avoid all that PTSD early. Story 182. Hug my dad. There is more I would do later, but the first thing would be to hug him. I lost him to CJD in 2011. Story 183. Geez, I'd find my dad and go on a walk and promise to nurture that relationship with everything I've got for the foreseeable future. I'd tell my best friend to do the same with her dad. He's only got 4 years left. I'd save my money. I'd listen when my dad said to invest and do exactly what he said. I'd forget all the losers and just find my husband. I'd finish college the first time. Story 184. Well, I'd actually have intimacy ed prior to 17, so I'd know to beat the living daylights out of that boy in 9th grade who couldn't keep his hands to himself, rather than simply becoming passively tragic end and letting it break me. I wouldn't bother with dating, and I might be able to save the classmate who committed tragic end, and I might even be able to deal with the twit boy who didn't understand the word no, and convinced himself we were dating by simply reporting him to the principal for stalking me and threatened legal action this time around if they didn't act like adults and actually discipline him more than making him apologize to me. Story 185. Write down all the things does. Do all the investment stuff starting with Microsoft Apple. With that money, keep some to put into Netscape and fudge off to Europe to catch all the important gigs of the late 80s, early 90s. Go hang out at the Hacienda in Manchester, track down the KLF, and insinuate myself into that scene. Hang out in Berlin post-wall coming down. Sell Netscape, buy more Apple and Amazon. Make sure I made friends with Joe Strummer, Andrew Weatherall, and Pete Namlook so I could convince them to get their hearts checked out and to eat a little better. Cash in on most of the fortune I'd have built up, make friends with some special ops guys, and fund a campaign to fix the timeline. Story 186. Call the cops on my parents or run away from home. Trying to make things right with them is hopeless. Also not get traumatized about having my period so young. Story 187. Go to the backyard, sit by the lake, and wait for the fireflies to come out. Or, as Mary Oliver put it, the dream of my life is to lie down by a slow river and stare at the light in the trees, to learn something by being nothing a little while. So fortunate for my childhood. If I could go back, it'd do it all the same. Story 188. Am I current me in 10-year-old body or 10-year-old me with current me's memories? Because in the first case, it'd start celebrating. But if it's 10-year-old me looking at the future, it'd break down. Story 189. Tell my mom I love her, and I can't wait to spend the day with her. Then write down a bunch of stock info, LOL. Story 190. Shut down the shoot I thought I had to endure. Learn healthy coping mechanism to deal with it and all the problems it causes so I don't have to spiral the way I did at 13, 14, and 17. And probably push to get an ADHD diagnosis. Story 191. I would just go outside and play. If there's no way of me returning to my old self, I would just take another stab at childhood and life. I would hug those extra tight I know I lose too quickly and just make sure they know I love them. Story 192. Tell Amy that I'm going to remember her for the rest of my life and that school is going to be emptier without her. Her mom was in the Navy and they moved to Germany. Also convince my grandma to let my mom take over the payments on the house so we can keep it in the family. Get into judo right away. Tell my mom to put her investments into Amazon, Apple, and Berkshire Hathaway. Try to convince my mom to seek community in another place besides the church. Enjoy the last year of sanity. A 10-year-old isn't going to stop 9/11 from happening nor strike it rich. Story 193. Call CPS or the sheriff's office. Lie through my teeth if I have to. Get removed out of the house in state custody until a suitable custodian can be found. Story 194. Read more and get diagnosed with ADHD. Also move in with my grandma. Just for continuity, I change schools so often. It'd still have to do all the dumb things I did from 21 on though. Story 195. Give myself a hug probably. I know that it'll only go downhill from there because that's when the mental health stuff basically caught on fire. Story 196. I'd tell my dad to go get that second option and tell him he has 1 year, 9 months, and 12 days until he dies from a tumor removal on his artery that clogs his heart and eliminate him. Then I'd try my best to stop 911. Then I'd wait about 7 years and buy some Bitcoin. But my main focus would be my dad. Story 197. Open a brokerage account in my mother's name that has a margin account. Then I would sneak into the bank I worked at in high school through the ventilation duct because I know bank vaults are not what you see in the movies as small Midwestern towns. Story 198. Run to my mother and collapse in her arms. I had a horrible, long, vivid nightmare. We lost all our money and had to move in with Grandma, and I had to go to a new school where the kids were even meaner to me. The cancer came back and you died. After you died, I kept getting strange symptoms and thinking I was dying too. And I went to a bunch of doctors, but no one could find what was wrong. I got into one of the best colleges, but kept failing classes and having to leave and come back. A disease spread through the whole world, and we all had to wear masks and stay inside for years. And Grandma caught the disease and she died. And the apprentice guy was elected president and tried to turn America into a dictatorship. Story 199. Tell my mom to divorce my dad would save my family a lot of headaches because he was a bare minimum dad and only got worse over the years. Story 200. My immediate thought upon reading this, I'd go hug my dad and tell him how much I love him. Squeeze him for a solid 5 minutes before letting go. Story 201. My mind went elsewhere. I'd run and go see my brothers and parents and remind myself how much I loved them then and now. Story 202. Go to my parents and tell them about the school janitor that molested me and stop him from doing it to anybody else. Story 203. Cry 'cause that's the year I got my first ever period. I'd cry harder about having to go through puberty with ADHD and undiagnosed autism again. After that, I'd try to be better with taking my meds and try and focus better in school and not worry about useless bullies. Story 204. Try everything possible to get the adults around me to recognize and treat my ADHD. I'm happy I got a diagnosis in the end, but receiving